What I'm about to say about the 1,000-year reign is just a fact. But first, let me say this. You better hope we're not in the 1,000-year reign, because nobody was saved during the 1,000-year reign or after the 1,000-year reign. Everybody's confused about the 1,000-year reign, but we are dealing with a translation, transliterations of translation. The word 1,000 years reign, 1,000-year reign, could have very easily, just as well, the words that were used also meant times, judgment, tribes, right? 1,000 means tribes, years is times, and reign is judgment. But the people who translated it did not know what it meant, and they did not know that it was already over. They thought it was something in the future. So they put this down as a 1,000-year reign. Everything in the book of Revelation comes from the things that Jesus said while he was on earth. But nobody thinks that he talked about his 1,000-year reign on earth. He talked about the Gentiles trampling the city, and he talked about that in Revelation for 42 months. He talked about the Jews falling by the edge of the sword and being led away captive. He talked about that in Revelation, that the beast was led away captive and fell by the edge of the sword. He talked about Babylon, or the temple, being left desolate and her precious stones being thrown down, and in her was found all the blood of the prophets, and Jerusalem being destroyed. And he talked about that in Revelation. Her precious stones were thrown down. The blood of the prophets were found in her. Everything that Jesus Christ said in Revelation, he mentioned on earth. So where does he mention his 1,000-year reign, or the reign of Christ? He said whenever he returned in the glory of his Father, in his kingdom with all of his holy angels, they would sit down on the throne with him and be given 12 thrones to judge the 12 tribes of Israel. He could have said, be given 12 thrones to judge the 12 Aleph of Israel. Same word used, that they translated to 1,000. Hebrew letters were also numbers, and the word 1,000 in Hebrew also means tribes. So it could have been translated either way, tribes or 1,000. That was the judgment. Like Daniel said, he said, thrones were sat in place, and judgment was given to the saints. And they were told they would judge the 12 tribes of Israel. He did not say, you guys are going to judge the Gentiles and everybody else. He didn't say that. He said they would be given 12 thrones to judge the 12 tribes of Israel. Judgment is what reigning means. You're given judgment. You're the one that is judging whenever you are reigning. That's what that means. So he told them that they would reign with him and judge the 12 tribes of Israel, and they would sit down on thrones with him. This is what the reign of Christ was. They just translated it to 1,000. Well, they translated it from Aleph to Chilios, which means 1,000 in Greek, and then they got kilo, and then we got 1,000. Jesus told them this again at the beginning of the book of Revelation. He said that he overcame and sat down on his Father's throne and was given the rod of iron. And those that overcame would sit down on the throne with him and judge the nations. That also meant the tribes of Israel. He told them on earth they would sit down on the throne with him and judge the 12 tribes of Israel. Jesus said some of them standing there would not taste death until he returned in his kingdom to reward every man according to their works. Every man was not rewarded according to their works until after the reign of Jesus Christ in Revelation chapter 20. Satan was also defeated back then. Jesus said, now is the judgment of this world. Now shall the prince of this world be cast out. Now the prince of this world is coming and has nothing in me, and of judgment, because the prince of this world is judged. Paul told them that God would bruise Satan under their feet shortly. It was happening in their lifetime, and that was the reign of Christ, was to judge the 12 tribes of Israel. If they would have translated those words correctly and understood what they meant, it meant that they would sit down on the throne with them. Thrones would be given unto the saints. Judgment would be given to the saints. They would sit down on the throne with him and judge the 12 tribes of Israel. That's what it meant. It meant they would judge or reign, judge the Aleph, the tribes, until the times. That's what years means. They translated it to years. The same word used for years can also be defined as time. It's all the same definition. or times. So it was the time of the judgment of the tribes until they were fulfilled. Once the judgment of the tribes was fulfilled, then Satan was let back up out of his prison to gather all the armies together, and he was destroyed by God. And everybody knows that they messed with translations in the Bible. Everybody wasn't going to the library back then checking out books, but how many times they put the word book in the Bible whenever they translated it? A ton. But it wasn't books. Usually it was a letter, scrolls, or parchment, papyrus, whatever. You know, how many times they translate the word ecclesia to church so that King James could get everybody to believe in the church, that they had balconies where the preacher stood up above everybody. How many times they translate the word world to age. The word earth was not even used until the 1400s, meaning this earth. Before, it was a Latin word meaning soil, and the Hebrew word also just meant land or soil. It was never talking about the entire earth. But these translators, to keep the Bible relevant for everybody, understood, they had to keep it relevant. So they put in book, they put in church, they put in earth, they put in world. Should have been age. He appeared once at the end of the age. What's the sign of his coming in the end of the age? He came back in his kingdom to get them. They went into the kingdom with him, and they were seen on Mount Zion ruling and reigning with him. The 144,000 were the first fruits unto God, and they were seen on Mount Zion, and they followed the Lamb whithersoever he went. They sat down on 12 thrones, and they were given those 12 thrones to judge the 12 tribes of Israel. And you know that what I'm saying is true. Jesus said whenever the Gentile armies came to trample Jerusalem underfoot for 42 months, that the Jews would fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive, and there would be great wrath upon that people, the Jews. And he said, flee Judea. And he said, those were the days of vengeance whenever all things written were fulfilled. That includes Gog and Magog, Satan being destroyed, like Isaiah chapter 27, whenever the altar in Herod's temple was made chalk stones or burned with fire. That's whenever Satan was destroyed. But there is no basis anywhere. See, Revelation is a fulfillment of the law and the things that Jesus said while he was on earth. In any of the Bible, anywhere, there is no basis for this arbitrary 1,000 years. There's no reason for it. Now, there was 400 years whenever they were in Egypt in bondage, and then there was 400 years before Jesus Christ, where they didn't speak to any prophets for 400 years, a time of silence. Same thing as them being in Egypt. There was 40 years where Joshua, which means the same thing as Jesus or Yeshua, they're interchangeable. There was 40 years of them being in the wilderness, and then Joshua took them into the promised land. There was 40 years of Jesus from 30 AD whenever he died until 70 AD whenever he took them into the promised land of Joshua, taking them into the promised land. All the things in the Bible have times and reasons in the past. But what they've done with this bad translation in the book of Revelation has no bearing, no basis anywhere in all of Scripture. It makes no sense, and there's no reason for it. Why would he just arbitrarily reign for 1,000 years? What's the point? He was doing something. He was completing something. It wasn't years. It was until the times. It wasn't reign. Well, it is, but it was judgment. Just like everywhere else said it would be the judgment. And it wasn't 1,000. It was the word tribes. Always did it have to do with judging the 12 tribes of Israel. But some people have this very strange doctrine where they believe the whole Bible is fulfilled, which they should believe the whole Bible is fulfilled. But then they're like, but there's one thing left. You're telling me a book was written 2,000 years ago, right? And if you believe it's fulfilled, then 1,000 years have already passed. And there's no way that Satan was let back out for another 1,000 years if he was supposed to be let out for a short time. It would make no sense. Even those that believe that Jesus already returned, but we're still in the 1,000-year reign, right? Or we're after the 1,000-year reign. So that would mean that the reign started in 70 AD. Then 1070 AD, that would be 1,000 years. And then Satan's let out for a short season? Another 1,000 years? What they're saying makes no sense, and it's because they didn't go to God for any of it. They tried to study. Before I knew anything about the 1,000-year reign or anything about these words and what they meant, I asked God about it. He told me that it ended back then in a dream. And that's how I knew that the 1,000-year reign already ended. not because I studied it or thought I knew something. These people have never heard from God, you know? And when they do hear from him, it's because of something they've already studied, right? He doesn't tell them words that they've never heard before, but it's their own mind and their own heart. Like he said in the law, that they prophesy prophecies of their own heart, and they see visions of their own heart. Because they only see things after they already know them. The things that I saw, many of them, I didn't know the words. I had to look them up. God told me things that I couldn't possibly have known or said. There's a difference. There's lies in the Bible, right? Jeremiah 8 verse 8 says there's lies in the Bible. How can you say that we're wise and we have the law of the Lord whenever the lying pen of the scribes has handled it falsely? God is not ambiguous. The Bible is ambiguous. You must go to God for truth. And then he'll set things straight like this, But you have to believe and you have to agree that there are translation problems in this book. Now, if even in the law there were lies in the Bible, nobody ever talks about those lies, right? That these people are trying to use the Bible as the, I don't know the right word for it, but they're trying to use it, as, well, barometer is not the right word, right? You know what I'm talking about. They're trying to use that and not God, even though the Bible says there's lies in the Bible, even though there's translation issues, even though there's books that aren't in there. But they will take it and got all these weird doctrines about Lucifer, Yahweh, all this stuff, because they're taking something that has lies in it. We must go to God, and then he'll reveal truth to us. The 1,000-year reign only lasted from 66 AD until the temple was destroyed. And then, whenever Old Jerusalem was destroyed, they went into New Jerusalem. Heaven and earth passed. Not one jot or tittle passed from the law until heaven and earth passed away. The sacrifice was taken away in 70 AD. Heaven and earth passed. They went into a new land in heaven. It was a heavenly Jerusalem, not on earth. And they've been in that heavenly Jerusalem ever since they defeated Satan in the 1st century. That was the judgment of the world back then. And he did what? Stephen got stoned for saying Jesus would destroy the temple and change the customs of Moses. The temple was destroyed. The jots and tittles passed. New heaven, new earth. Customs changed. The fashion of that world passed away. The elements, which means rudiments or customs, passed away. And everything was changed. Subscribe.